Women don't owe anyone their hotness. At least that's what Mofo said. Hi, my name is Dr. Natalie Jones. I am a mental health therapist, and I have been working in the mental health sphere for many years now. And I want to have a conversation about women and their looks. And I was compelled to do this because I just saw a clip about Rachel Ray. And, there was this clip from the Daily Mail, and, it kind of shows Rachel Ray looking a little bit differently. And there's a lot of people that were commenting on, geez, she looks like this, she looks like that, and this and that and the other. And, there's one commenter that said, women don't owe anyone their hotness. So I'm going to credit Mofo for saying that. And I think that is so true. I think, especially, I can't speak for other cultures outside of the U.S., in terms of like what they regularly endorse. But I know that the U.S. is very heavily driven by, a certain type of aesthetic. And unfortunately, there are women that kill themselves that try to meet or match or beat this aesthetic, right? And this is so true even when it comes to abused women. And I think one example I'll use, and I don't usually like to throw celebrity names out there, but one woman I know that this celebrity gets a lot of flack, a black celebrity, in fact, is Little Kim. And a lot of people talk about Little Kim and how she looks different, and a lot of people don't know the severe abuse that Little Kim went through, and she's spoken publicly about this, so this is why I'll bring it up. And how people would talk about her color and how she doesn't look this and look this. And, it's so often I think what drives women to get plastic surgery to the point of, disfigurement. And I'm not saying that about Little Kim or any woman, actually, but it drives women to get plastic surgery to the point of disfigurement is male-centered views about how you need to look this way and you need to look that way to be pleasing to the male gaze or to society. Because I think there's a male gaze, but there's also the woman's gaze, and women can be very, very cruel when it comes to a woman's appearance. If you're not dressed in designer, if you don't have your hair done, you don't have your nails done, and this and that and the other. And I'm one of those people that falls into that category, and that I'm not always dolled up, right? This is as dolled up as you're going to see me get. However, there has also been like this, and I'll use myself as an example. Like, I've had plastic surgery 4 times. Most of you know I have a lazy eye. And so that's no secret. Well, I've had surgery on it 4 times now, and I've had it by the surgeon, the same surgeon every single time, who is now deceased. And the surgeon I had it done by is Jonathan Christenberry. And, Jonathan Christenberry is very popular back on the East Coast. Unfortunately, Jonathan Christenberry got himself in quite a bit of legal trouble. But the last time I went to Jonathan to have it done, I could tell that something was off, because when you have eye surgery, the type that I have, which is blepharoplasty, which is basically where they're lifting up the eyelid, and I have to get it done, or, they say you have to get it done every so often, is that you're awake for the surgery. And so I was awake, but he hadn't properly administered the anesthesia. And so when they do the surgery, they do it with the laser. So I can actually feel like the burning. And, he was just like, well, just wait a minute, And I'm like telling this guy, it's burning, you got to stop. And he's like, well, we'll just go a little bit further. Like, no, we're not going any further. And, unfortunately, I can't do anything because you're restrained when they have you do it. But, this is something that, you just have to endure. And that was and I had trusted this guy, but I knew something was off during that experience. During that last surgery experience that I had with him. And so it came out later that he had been struggling with a whole bunch of stuff, which he eventually went to prison for quite some time. and before he ultimately died. But that's an example, a much milder example of like how you just kind of go through this sort of suffering, and these are things that are behind the scenes that you don't really see, because there's a lot of women that have undergone plastic surgery. There's a lot of women who struggle with body image to try to be perfect, and they kind of go through these yo-yo diets, binging, purging, orthorexia, where they're overly focused on health, right? But people that are never like, they always feel unattractive, or they always feel that something needs to be tweaked, no matter what they go through. But so they kind of put themselves through these situations. But a lot of that comes from male-centeredness. A lot of that comes from relational violence from women. So if you kind of dig below the surface, I promise you, there's always some abuse behind body image issues, behind plastic surgeries and things like that, to try to, you're not, at a certain point, you're only trying to please yourself in this way, because unfortunately society is very cruel and has been conditioned to say that you're not very beautiful if you don't conform to certain norms, right? And I personally haven't had surgery since that experience. I kind of, I think about it every now and then. Do I want to have it done? But then I'm like, is it, who do I have to please besides myself? And that's really, you really have to go through a lot of personal growth, and you really have to check people who are abusive, even on the internet, because there's people that sometimes make comments about it on the internet, but you really have to check people about, like, just allowing me to just be human and show up as I am. I don't have to be pleasing to your eye to be worthy of basic human decency and courtesy. And I just want to put that out there.